Hi, I'm Mike Hanfurger with TurkeyFast Studios. Today I'm going to show you about the stat system in Cat RPG Builder. By the end of this video, you should be able to add stats to players or NPCs or pretty much anything you'd like, as well as learn about the different types of stats that there are and how to use stat modifiers to change them. So to get started, we're going to use this same example level we've been using on a lot of the videos. There's some geometry. There's a player set up in first-person mode with a player controller and a camera controller. The stat system is actually built on top of the value system in Cat. If you haven't already, you should go back and watch the video about the value system, and that will get you up to speed on the basics of it. So the first thing we need to do on our player character is to add a value holder. And that's a component that allows you to store values on the player. Now we can set this storage level to something other than none. We would probably want to set it to character for a player, right? And that way we can actually have our values saved. But for now, let's just set this to none. Once we have that, we can add some values using the button here. All of the stats exist under this custom thing. So if we look under RPG stats, so we have a few different types here. We have a base stat. Let's just add one of each type. We have a derived stat. We have an experience stat, which just displays the experience, and that's part of the progression system. We'll go over that in another video. We have a fuel stat. We have a leveled stat and a level stat. So leveled stat means that each level, as you progress, the stat can change. And we'll probably talk about that one this video, even though it does sort of bleed into the next video, which will be on the progression system. A level stat just gets your level, and a skill point stat just gets how many skill points you have. So let's take a look at these. So base stat is pretty simple. It just has a value. Now, all stats are floats, so they're decimal numbers. They're not integers. So you can set this to whatever you want. A lot of times you want to have it between 0 and 1. But it's really up to you and what you're doing in your game. The other thing to note here is if you want that stat to persist, you do have to click this persist button, and you would have to set the storage level. So let's call this base stat strength. And we can actually set it to you don't have to use the same numbering system for all your stats anyway. They can be based off of whatever you want. So let's use the D&D style stats. So we'll have our strength be 16. Let's actually make a couple of these. So we'll make strength, we'll make wisdom, we'll make intelligence, we'll make charisma, and we'll make dexterity. Make sure it's so let's just move these up under strength here. So let's make the 14. We'll make this guy smart. Charisma 12. Dexterity 17. Oh, Constitution's the other one. We'll add that too. We'll give them a 10 for that. They're not very good there. So those are just base stats. They have a value. It never changes. I mean, you can change it through an action or something like that. You could actually just use a regular modify float value. But otherwise, these are just going to stay the same. So now we have derived stats. So derived stats are based off of a particular stat. In this case, we can say strength. And then they have some number of operations. So by default, with no operations, this stat is going to be our strength, which is 18 or 16. So let's come up with a name for this. We'll call this attack damage. So maybe our attack damage is our strength divided by 18. So we can sort of get a percentage there. And then we can add another one. And then we can multiply by that's multiplied by, and we can use another stat here with the dexterity. Dexterity, and we'll add one more. Divide by so we'll actually end up using half our dexterity here. Actually, let's even make it less here. All right. So we've got a formula in here to determine our attack damage. And so this stat would always be equal to strength divided by 18 times our dexterity divided by 72. Actually, do we really want that? Let's make that 18 again. I'm not very good with game design, so you'll have to bear with me. So the next thing we have here is a fuel stat. So fuel stats can be used for multiple things. One thing you might want to use it for is for your health. You might want to use it for mana. Anything that's going to change often is what you would use a fuel stat for. Anything that changes often and has a maximum value. So there is a bug here that's going to be fixed in the next version of cat, but this is value. This should be max value over here. So let's call this health. And let's just make another base stat here. Actually, here's a good place where we can show off our leveled stat. So I think we want to add a progression manager to the character. So we're going to talk about progression in the next video, but for now, let's just select whatever experience table we have and add a progression service. Note that there is no stat service. So progression service. So we can add some tables to the progression service. Let's add a max health table, which we've already made. So if we take a look at this was in one of the examples that comes with Cat RPG. So these stat level tables, which you can create via create Cat RPG stat level table, okay? What you can do here is define a bunch of different levels. So we have 10 levels defined here, and for each level we have the value of the stat defined. So in this case, the first level here, level 1, your stat is 100, level 2 it's 120, level 3 150, and so on up to level 10 is 3000. So now if we go back to our player here and we add on, and we add stats, we add a leveled stat over here, and let's call that max health. So again, this is a bug that should be fixed momentarily. It's only in Unity version 2018.4.3 and above. So this first thing is an asset bundle that we would get the table out of, and then the table name, which we've used max health table. So now we could put that in a bundle, or what we've done here is added it directly to the progression service. So this over here is a check whether to prepend the class. Once again, this name here will be fixed shortly. And this one's prepend the race. So if you had a class and a race, you could change that name of that table based on the class and the race. But we're not going to do that right now. So back to our health. So our current value, we'll set that as 100. And our max value is going to be our max health. Okay, so the next thing we can do here is we have a canvas. Let's add a button here. We'll call this damage button. So obviously you would want to have other characters damaging the player, but we're just going to make this pretty simple for this example. Oops. And we're going to turn this button into a state machine, because that is the easiest way to make buttons work. And we're going to add a button trigger onto it. UI button trigger. And under our button trigger, we are going to do a modify. So like I said, all of these modify fuel. All these are float values. So we could also use a modify float action as well. So owner, oops, we want this on the player. The fuel is going to be, oh, I think it just wants a, yep. Fuel is going to be health. And the amount is going to be, we'll start with -10. So we'll do 10 damage every time you hit this button. And I believe this health bar here, if we take a look at that, it has an image underneath it, which is that white bit. That's just the background. And then it has the red bit, which is the fill. So we can hook this up to our player's health pretty easily if we add a special data binding component called a UI fuel bar data bind. So we want to bind to the player in this case, and for the fuel name we'll set health, and that should do it. Okay, let's give this a try. So now we have our fuel set over here. Let's actually take a look at it. You notice value is 100, our max health is 100. We can hit damage. Now the value is 90. Our fuel bar went down a little bit. We can keep hitting it. And you'll notice that once it gets to 0, that's it. It doesn't go any further. That's one of the parts of the fuel, is that it can never be below 0 and it can never be over the maximum value. So the other thing that we've been using here, or we can use, is our attack damage. So what can we do with that? We can add an attack button. So canvas, duplicate that. We'll set that attack button. Attack. Let's move that over here. Okay, so on our triggered action, instead of a modify fuel action, let's add an enemy here. So okay, so actually let's edit this guy. So this is just a regular enemy. He just paths towards the player. He's kind of annoying. He doesn't actually hurt the player. So we can add a value holder to him to give him some stats. And on him, we're going to give him a max. Oops. Sorry. I'm going to come over here. RPG stats. We're going to give him a health stat and a base stat. Right? So we'll call this health. We'll call this max health. We'll set his max health to 100. So we're doing this. He's not leveled. He's just a guy, right? So initial is 100. Value is owner. Max health. Okay. So the next thing we can do is let's add some states on this guy, right? So, whoops. This one states new. So we'll add an alive state and a dead state. And in our alive state, we'll have him do this annoying thing. We'll set alive as the default state. And then we're going to add a trigger here. So there's no actual like stat triggers. So we just want to add a float value trigger, which we can use over here. So owner, we'll set that to health when it's equal to 0. And when that happens, we'll do a change state. And we'll change to dead. So when his health is 0, he gets dead. Alright, so apply that out. Let's go back to our scene here. Let's put him in our scene, make sure he's on the ground. Yep. Alright, so he's going to path towards us. And we have our our attack button here. And we are going to actually, let's come back to our attack damage. We want our attack damage to be negative. So we're just going to multiply by negative, or divide by negative 18 to make that negative. So modify fuel action. We're going to go, we're going to go with named. Obviously in a real game you'd not do this way, but health, and then instead of negative 10, we're going to make this owner. Oh, owner is the attack button. Sorry, we want to set this to player. And on this, we can select this. And we have, under the object values, we have attack damage. So we can set this to attack damage. So we're going to modify the enemy's health by the player's attack damage. Let's take a look at this. So, you know, we don't need to make this so complicated. We're going to make this So we'll do your strength divided by 18 times 10. So up to 10 points of damage. So we'll do your strength divided by 18 times 10. So maximum damage is going to be 10. Oh, we need to make sure that we multiply by a negative number here so that we're reducing the health and not increasing the health. So let's give this a try. We should be able to hit the attack button, and if we watch this guy's health, it should go down. And it's going down by, whatever our attack damage calculation here, 16 divided by 18 times negative 10. So if we keep hurting him here, let's get him to follow us again. Almost dead. Now he's dead. And he's not going to follow us anymore. We should have stopped his pathing movement whenever he dies. But now you can see he's in the dead state because this triggered action is true because his health is now 0. The next thing we can talk about is stat modifiers. And a stat modifier is a temporary change to a stat that can be removed or added and removed via actions. Use cases are, if you have a weapon that makes your strength higher or your attack damage higher. You can also use them for any sort of status effect, if you step in a trap and suddenly your strength is lower. And in fact, let's do that. So let's make a trap. Let's select this guy. This guy's a teleporter. We can actually just duplicate him, and we'll call this trap. And let's move it right over here so it's nearby. Okay. Trigger action, collision trigger. When the player collides with it, we're not going to move to position. Let's unpack the prefab here. Delete that. Okay. So this collision trigger is going to have whoever stepped on it as the target. So what we can do is we can have a action list. Set that to serial mode. The first thing we want to do is apply stat modifier, and then we'll add a delay, and then remove the stat modifier. The first thing we do here is we want to set the target to targeted. We want to set the stat to strength. And then the way this apply stat modifier action works is that you add the stat modifier underneath it. So let's go to cat RPG stats stat modifier. So we have a stat modifier, which is just a list of operations, and we will subtract 5 from your strength. So your strength will go down by 5. We also want to set the name of it here. So we can call this strength trap, and then we'll delay for 10 seconds, and then remove. And again, we want to set this to targeted. And then the stat is strength. And the modifier is strength trap. So whenever you step on this little thingy here, it's going to take your strength down by 5 for 10 seconds and then put it back up. So let's actually make that 20 seconds for now. So we give that a try. And I come over here and find the player's strength, which is right here. Okay, get away from this guy. So 16 right now. We stepped on it, and you notice that there's something underneath it, which is the strength trap, so subtracting 5 from it. So now, this guy's annoying, huh? If you remember, the attack damage was based on the strength, so if we hit that, it's now 11. And if we watch this, oh, that got stopped. We would have actually had to sit on that thing. Okay, well. Let's do this a little differently. So let's add another state. Oops. So we'll add a trapped. And that's where we have this action list. And instead, under this triggered action, let's add a change state to change into the trap state. And then at the end of this action list, we'll add a change state to change back into the active state. All right. So now, let's set this back to 10. What's going to happen is when you step on it, it's going to work this time. What was happening before is that you would step on it, and this trigger would be true, and it would start running these actions. It would apply the thing, and it would start on the delay. And then as soon as you moved off the teleporter or the little disc here, it would stop the actions because that trigger was no longer true. So now if we move it into the trap state, then it will stay there until we tell it to change back. So let's give this another try here. So if we come over here, let's go take a look at our strength, right? Now we have the strength trap. If you look at the trap here, it's in the delayed action on the trap state here. So if we attack this guy, our strength was 11. It just finished. Now it's back in the trap state. So now if we attack this guy, yeah, we have no more stat modifier here. Attack damage, yeah. So our attack damage is 16 now, and this guy, his health is going down by whatever it's going down by now. He's dead. That's pretty much it for the stat system. It's fairly simple, but you can also make very complicated things with it. So in this video, you should have learned how to add stats to a player, an NPC, and also to set up different types of stats, such as base stats, derived stats, and leveled stats, and then also to use stat modifiers to temporarily modify stats and change the output or outcome of them. I hope you found this video informative and useful. Let us know in the comments if there are other videos or tutorials you'd like to see. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on social media for the latest videos and other news. For more information on Cat or Cat RPG Builder and how they can help you build and prototype RPGs faster, please visit catgamebuilder.com. I'm Mike Handverger with Turkey Fast Studios. Thanks for watching.